How's it going, everybody? I'm Keegs, and today we're going to be talking about some comic book stuff. And I love comic books, and I used to be really into them and order them all the time off, mycomicshop.com, and I've kind of fallen off, but I'm trying to get back into it. So here we go. Today we are going to talk about Batman, the Black Mirror. Now, this story is about Batman after the events of Final Crisis, and in this, there are 7 stories that it's broken out into. The first one is called The Black Mirror, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'll have a bunch of videos talking about each of the individual ones going through this entire novel. And let's get into it. The events of this book take place just after the events of Final Crisis. So if you haven't read that comic series yet, then maybe some minor spoilers for the stuff in here. But that being said, in this story, Dick Grayson is actually Batman because some events happen, and I don't want to spoil anything too much, but Bruce Wayne is no longer able to be the Batman of Gotham City. So Dick Grayson takes over, and his Robin is going to be Tim Drake. And they're going to go and be Batman and Robin, but it's going to have a slightly different vibe than it had with Bruce, I think, because Dick isn't like Bruce. Bruce is a little more dark and brooding, and Dick just has like a lighter air to him, even though in this whole novel he is a little more somber than I would say he normally is. I don't normally like when Bruce Wayne is not Batman. I just don't feel like anybody really fits the persona right, but if it's going to be anyone, I'm glad it's Dick Grayson because I think he is one of my all-time favorite characters, and I'm sure at some point I'm going to go over the Grayson series because that's another one I have up on my wall somewhere. And we're going to read that and talk through it a bit too, I think. Anyways, this starts off with Dick Grayson talking about his childhood when he was in the circus. And his father had a map with pins all over the country about places they were going to perform. And these pins would either be a blue pin or a red pin. Blue pin means, hey, this is a small town. We're going to do kind of safe tricks and just easy things. Red means start pulling out more tricks and doing more dangerous stunts. But there was one place that was a black pin. You guessed it, Gotham City. And Gotham City, he said, just has a hunger to it. And you have to feed that hunger or it feeds. So as we can all assume, Gotham City is like probably the highest crime rate in the world, I assume, in this universe. So anyways, this is going to be an intense story. You can already tell from that monologue. In parallel to this monologue, there is a boy that's getting bullied at school, and he goes to his locker, takes his serum, and a little bit later he gets thrown into a river, and all of a sudden he transforms into this monster and bites the hand off of one bully and attacks the other two. And then the serum eventually wears off and he turns back into a normal boy. Commissioner Gordon then takes a sample of this serum to Wayne Manor because they have this new awesome state-of-the-art laboratory that Bruce Wayne donated. And the GCPD doesn't really want to use this because I guess if he donated it to the police department, he didn't send it to the police department. It's in his own house, so they'd all have to go there. And I think there's a little pride thing where they don't want to feel like they're taking handouts, but obviously I can see it from that point, but we know Bruce Wayne wants it there as a cover as to why he needs a state-of-the-art lab like that so that he can do analysis and things. But anyways, they have this really awesome lab. Jim Gordon comes over. They analyze the sample, and then they realize that it's the same mutagen that Killer Croc took to turn himself into the Killer Croc, but clearly not as permanent. And Dick Grayson thinks it's kind of weird that this kid so young would be able to get his hands on something so crazy, but he ends up saying, okay, I'm going to go investigate this butler that was watching over the kid. But before I move on real quick, there was a funny jab in there about Dick talking to Jim about how Jim took him to his first prom, but he was actually taking his daughter to prom, which, as we know, is Barbara. The butler starts to talk, but then is like immediately shot by the mother, who then immediately turns around and jumps out a window and kills herself. I mean, she is completely crazy. And then Batman goes down to her dead body and finds like a patch sewn into her neck that gives him a clue as to where to go next. So that tag was also from another crime scene that was entered into evidence, and then Commissioner Gordon and Dick are talking. They're like, oh, we know who was on duty, the cop that was in the evidence room. So then Batman, Dick, goes to confront this cop. When he goes to the dirty cop's house, he realizes there's a lot of guns, like an arsenal of things, and night vision goggles and crazy things like that. And they end up having like a very brief fight, and Batman wins and ties him up. And as soon as he's talking to him, then he gets like attacked behind from some random girl that he like throws a batarang into the head and knocks her out. And then he's talking to this dude, and this dude, the only thing he says is, "It's the dealer. He's watching me." So then Batman's like, "What are you talking about?" And then all of a sudden, this dude like has like roots grow out of his mouth, and he dies, and like all of his limbs and everything. It's one of the weirdest ways I feel like somebody's died yet. So it screams to me like Poison Ivy, but it didn't look like Poison Ivy did this, because I don't know. But anyway, there was plants growing out of him. A very weird way to die. Then Act 2 starts, and in Act 2, Batman has been talking to Oracle, who obviously is Barbara Gordon, also known as Babs, and she has let Dick know that she's been able to trace certain people to this event in the Mirror House. And the Mirror House is essentially this auction house where they're selling a bunch of old villain stuff and like things that were used to, fight superheroes at one point or something. But anyway, he changes his face with this really cool tech that Tim Drake gives him from Lucius, and it's supposed to like change his face configurations. And Barbara is able to get him an invite to this exclusive party. He shows up at this party, and he gets out, hands the guy his invitation, and the guy gives him a gas mask. So he puts on this gas mask, goes into the party, and they're having this whole rally. They close the doors, and then the guy at the front, that is the dealer, is auctioning off stuff, and he says, "Here's our first item. It's this crowbar." And this crowbar, if you remember, was the one used to beat Jason Todd to death. And then he's going to, come back later as a Red Hood, I'm pretty sure. But regardless of that, it's actually a ploy. And in this ploy, they out Dick as Batman. I'm not actually 100% sure how they knew that that was Batman. I guess they figured out he died. The real guy died that he was impersonating somehow. I'm not really sure. But they say, "Oh, look, everybody else's gas mask's working except for yours, Dick. Haha, you're going crazy now." Then Dick is starting to lose it in his mind, and it's like really messing with him. He starts viewing all these people as monsters, which I guess they kind of are, because they are trying to literally rip him apart and take his bones home, because these people are freaking crazy. But regardless, Dick then thinks to himself, "What did my dad tell me when I was younger?" Well, there's a few different things that if you're really scared, you've got to do. Number one, you pick a point, look at it, and never look away. Keep intently focused on it. And if that doesn't work, then you go to number two. In that sense, you are going to really try to ground yourself. Tell you facts of things that you know. He says, "I am Dick Grayson. I am Batman of Gotham City." And then he says, "These people are Gotham people, not monsters." But then he's really hallucinating, and he sees literal monsters. So that did not work for him. Meanwhile, he's jumping around like his old acrobat self and just trying to get out of the house. And then at this point, he says, "Well, if those two things don't work, then there's only one thing left." And number three thing is, if you're gonna fall, land somewhere soft. He ends up getting pulled out by Robin, who's Tim Drake, and he's kind of like in the hospital, and Barbara's like, "Hey, you shouldn't go out there, you're really hurt." But he says, "No, the dealer said he's leaving this morning on a private plane. I gotta catch him." So he suits up and just rolls out. And when he does that, he becomes like, gets this big metal suit, gets in the Batwing, and flies off to him. And eventually he gets to the cargo plane and releases all the cargo and confronts the dealer. And then the dealer turns into this like crazy literal monster, and he's like throwing things around, and he ends up getting tossed out of the plane into the ocean. Of course, they never find his body. So that's pretty much how the Black Mirror 3-part series ends too. And Dick finally moves into the Wayne Manor. He starts to put some personal effects down and tie roots. Earlier in the comic, Babs was telling him that he's trying to stay mobile, and that's why he doesn't want to put any stuff in there, because he doesn't want to ground himself to a place. But at the end of this, he has finally started to put roots down. And that's pretty much all that this first comic, The Black Mirror, was about. And then we're going to be moving in next time to the next comic book, and I will let you know what that is when I figure it out, because I haven't gotten that far yet. I stopped after the first one, but the second one is coming, so stay tuned. I'm Keegs. I hope you enjoyed my talk, and I will talk to you all in the next episode of the graphic novel, The Black Mirror.